Hanukkah and celebrations took place in Augusta today. Members of Maine's Jewish community held a menorah lighting event at the State House to celebrate Hanukkah. They were joined by Governor Mills and others who gathered at the Hall of Flags as the candles were lit. Rabbi Moshe Wilansky of Shabbat of Maine organized the ceremony. He says this celebration is especially important in light of the October 7th attack on Israel. He asks that people think about the hostages still held captive who will not be with loved ones during the holidays.
Maybe 7,000 Jews were attacked, where over 1,200 deaths, captives, hostages were taken, destruction from the worst we saw in 75 years plus. So the idea of unity, for the government to come out, different elected officials, makes it very important. Because the whole miracle of Hanukkah was a small band of weak people were able to win against the mighty. So by working hard, we can get rid of lighting one little light, like the governor said today, chases away a lot of darkness.
Mills spoke today, saying that Maine is a state where everyone is welcome. Hanukkah ends on Friday evening.